o'clock. On our consent agenda, we just have our prior minutes from the August 17th meeting. Any questions or discussion about the minutes? All right, so a motion to accept. I can make the motion to accept.
Sarah just said she'll be 5 minutes late, but she's
Okay.
coming. Yeah.
All right, super. We'll do that by roll. Kat? Morgan, is she able to hear us?
I don't know, I'm gonna shout her
Erin?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
Shaylee? And Mary is an aye. Kat, are you able to hear us? Didn't take
out.
that
So we are not able to hear her.
as a no.
No, she's turning her microphone on and speaking. We can't hear her.
We can't hear her?
Yeah.
Okay, so I should just move on for now until we sort out the tech glitch?
Yes.
Can she check the vote? Yeah,
All right. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting?
Not really the flow, but I have 2 executive sessions under mine that I think we could push to the end.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
That sounds fine, because we also have one, so we'll do all the executive sessions at the end, so that everyone else can go home. Great. Okay, Morgan, any visitors in virtual world?
Nope.
And none here? So moving on, that brings us to our spotlight with Melissa Wood.
Can we get my slideshow up?
Just send it to me tomorrow.
You have it? And it's,
If you have it open, could you just hit share to Morgan?
no.
That would be quicker.
It links over from the agenda too.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fancy.
I also threw it in the notes. It's everywhere.
Just like Lydia's.
All these live links now, we have to
Right?
upload them.
Yeah, it's very slick.
And Kat is good with voting and asking questions via the chat.
Okay.
We can move to the next slide. So today I'll be talking about early literacy or pre-literacy, and we'll get into looking at the specific skills, but really it's all of the skills that encompass reading and writing before children are actually reading and writing in the ways that we think about reading and writing. So we use Teaching Strategies Gold, or TSG as it's often referred to, in FNESU, but also it's statewide. It was adopted by the Vermont Agency of Education when Universal Pre-K came to be. It's grounded in 38 research-based objectives, and within those objectives there are specific skills that teachers collect documentation on, and we watch for progress and skill development. It's used to support all learners. So it's not specific to special ed or general ed, it really encompasses everybody. And some of the data we're looking at today will be the widely held expectations, which looks at the range of knowledge and skills and abilities that children have at a particular age, or Teaching Strategies Gold actually goes up into 3rd grade. So it kind of breaks off into the grades. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and this just kind of shows you visually what the progressions of development looks like and those ranges. So you can see where generally our 3-year-olds are the green band and our 4-year-olds are the blue band. And you can see that depending on their development, they can really fall in. So you might have a 2-year-old who's demonstrating 3-year-old skills, a 3-year-old who's demonstrating 4-year-old skills. It really depends. And you might see that in some areas of development, a 3-year-old is demonstrating 4-year-old skills, and yet in other areas, that same 3-year-old is demonstrating 2-year-old skills. And sometimes they're straight across the board on target in their development. Next slide. And this gives you an idea of the objectives. So where we're talking about there are 38 objectives, here's one objective that says a child is demonstrating knowledge of print and its uses. So it starts at infancy, where they're just showing interest in books. And again, that brown band down there, or number 14, goes all the way up to 3rd grade. But generally, we're looking at like 3 through 7. And this is actually just a photo of one of our current students, and she's falling right in there as a 3-year-old, holding her book so she's orienting the book. She was able to flip the pages, she points to the pictures. So this is an example of documentation that the teacher would have, in that they're taking pictures and adding notes in Teaching Strategies Gold to document her growth. And next slide. So here are our language and literacy objectives. Language, we're really looking at listening to and understanding complex language, so that's their receptive language. And then the expressive language is using the language to express their thoughts and needs, and then using appropriate conversational and other communication skills. So it's really working on a lot of that social engagement and understanding and expressing themselves. And then as we get into literacy, they're starting to demonstrate phonological awareness, which includes rhyme, but I mean, it really lists it, and I don't want to go through everything. But so we're talking about rhyme, understanding sounds, understanding concepts of the alphabet knowledge, understanding print and its use, so that child understanding that that book has words and being able to follow along, comprehending and responding to books, so having conversations about what they're reading and being able to connect it to their own lives, and then demonstrating writing skills, which you'll generally see when you think about writing, like starting to write their names and those pieces. You're starting to see late 3 into their 4-year-old year. But thinking about those earlier skills where they're just learning how to hold a writing utensil, which falls in under physical development as well. So while we're going to be talking about language and literacy objectives in early childhood, and again when you're thinking about those bands, it's really, really complex when you're thinking about development, because if they can't hold, if they don't have the fine motor skills to hold that writing utensil, it's going to be very hard for them to learn to write their name. Or if you think about gross motor development, if they don't have the ability to balance and sit appropriately with that core strength, it's going to be hard to like sit and look through a book, because they don't have that ability to hold their body. But back to literacy. So I pulled data specifically from 4-year-olds across our SU, which ended up being 82 children across our supervisory union, and looked at where they were with that widely held expectations. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide. So in the fall, 18% fell below that band. So if you're thinking about that 4-year-old green band, 18% of our students fell below, 81% fell within, and then 1.1 came in exceeding that band. And by fall, I mean that they're finalizing all of the documentation they've collected mid-December. So this data comes from September into December. So then in the spring, which we finalize our checkpoint in June, so it's really that January through mid-June, we have only 12.7% falling below, nearly 70% meeting, and that exceeding piece is phenomenal. And that's in their language development. So once children are in the classroom, there's constant conversation, questions being asked, and that's amongst adults to children, children to children, adults modeling language back and forth. So really focusing on their language development. There's a lot of structure in place in regard to following directions. So along with the language, there's also visuals to help children understand the expectations around following routines, following directions, and that really supports their language. Let me think if there's anything else around language. I think for now, that is it. But that is phenomenal growth, seeing that below go down. You know, you see the meeting go down, but it's only because that exceeding shot way up.
Was last year the first year of using this program?
Teaching strategies, no, we've used it.
Or the,
What was first last year was the first time we had coordination of
Okay.
this and looking a little more deeply at curriculum and programming and
gotcha,
expectations.
gotcha. So the assessments like this had been happening? Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Next slide, please.
It's just been
Oh,
interesting.
sorry. The big difference there is the word, literacy. So now we're looking at those literacy skills, the phonological awareness, the print, being able to interact with stories and books. So again, in the fall, we had nearly 20% below, 80% were meeting, and nobody was exceeding those standards. By the spring, we had 8%, only 8% below, nearly 88% meeting, which is fantastic, and we moved up a few of the kids into that exceeding range, which is some really, really great growth. So what does this mean? Because we fall into the band, and you know that 4-year-olds can still be meeting when they're closer to that, like, you know, because the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds kind of overlap. So they might still be meeting, but in that 3-year-old kind of range, in that younger 4 range perhaps. So where does this leave us in terms of kindergarten readiness? And really that's looking at, again, the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they'll need going into kindergarten. And so for language, we had 13% of students that were emerging into kindergarten readiness, so really securing those skills, and nearly 87% had secured those kindergarten readiness skills. And again, in literacy, we were emerging in 23%, but nearly 77% have those skills that they need in kindergarten. This was an average SU-wide, so there is quite, not quite a range. There was some differences based on location, and that really, I think some of those factors would be class size, class need, but overall, this is a really great place to be for us. All right, next slide. So things that we do in FNESU, sorry, to continue and support early language and literacy. So we have literacy-rich environments, which means we have print everywhere. Again, we're constantly and consistently having conversations, getting children to share their experiences, their learning, and providing that throughout the classroom. There's that picture on the bottom left are some kids acting out Humpty Dumpty. The middle is just a bulletin board that just shows some print. So the block area, there's a sign there on the right that says block area. So again, it's connecting the print to the environment. There's an older student who's reading aloud to younger students, which is a really great connection across the grades. And that top right corner is actually from our curriculum this year, which I'll get into, and that's MatMan. So children are understanding some basic number concepts, some shapes, positional terms, and body awareness, and how to, one of the pieces that's really important in early development is understanding your body and being able to draw a person. Like, that's part of development. And so MatMan supports that because they've built it, and there's a really cute song that goes with it. But so they take turns building it, or they build their own, and then eventually that will translate to them being able to draw a person with multiple features. And then on the next slide, there's just more photos of what early literacy looks like. So on the left, you see that a child created something, and They then drew what they had created, they wrote some numbers, and then they named it, and so that bottom piece, there were questions about their creation, and the teacher wrote for them, so the teacher's modeling that. You see this kiddo holding his drawing, and he had created that Lego structure, and then he drew it. Bottom left were some rhyming puzzle pieces, so that's kind of errorless teaching, where the puzzle pieces will only go together if the two words rhyme, and actually it's pictures, so the kids would find the matching pictures, and they'd know that they definitely rhyme because they go together, and then they can say the rhyme based on the pictures. We have children in that middle picture building their names. Another kiddo, she has that sign, and she's used inventive spelling. So her word is syrup, and she's pretty close there. She has an I for the Y and a B for a P, but that's really great. And then below, she's drawing a rainbow and some people, and she has her name on that. So those are all examples of early literacy. I forgot 2 points. Can we go back, Morgan, to the slide for how will FNESU continue to support? It's the one, yes, thank you. I forgot a couple points here. So I had mentioned Matman, that's where I got carried away with Matman. So our Get Set for School curriculum is what I was referencing there. And it has a really heavy literacy focus. And it has an assessment piece that, again, is very hands-on. So it's engaging children in learning through play. There's vocabulary, there's oral language, there's phonological awareness, and it's all through hands-on activities where they are, there's a sound around box where they might put rhyming pictures in, or rhyming objects in, where they have to pull out and find the other one that rhymes. They might be working with sound, so all the things that are in the box have the same beginning sound. There are other pieces where it's a roll-a-dough, so instead of, before you even start writing letters, it's building the letters and getting that textile, that sensory input to help them understand that, knowing that motor development and the connection with the brain. So I'm really looking forward to having this implemented and then seeing where that takes us in really solidifying those skills. And again, speaking to that is just really presenting playful learning opportunities to engage in rich conversation. So an example of that was the other day I had gone into a classroom during their center time, and a kiddo was working on a craft, and she had purple paper. So she had purple paper and she was gluing on pom-poms. So I had an opportunity to talk to her about her project, and I was like, wow, you have purple paper and you're gluing pom-poms. And then I focused on that sound. That's a lot of sounds in there, words that start with. So it's really just kind of working it into what the child is naturally doing to start embedding those skills and that awareness that's going to carry them through. Okay, now to our last, and I really hope that this works. So this is a kiddo. This was his first week of kindergarten this year, but you can see as a graduated preschooler the skills that he gained through his preschool years.
Oh, we're gonna hear.
No. It worked earlier today.
It's the sound. We'll have sound.
It's through Zoom.
Turn the page.
Oh, there we go.
Can they watch it in the link?
Yes. Yep.
Not all at the same time,
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, it will crash the system.
but we get feedback.
Yeah, so what you'll see when you do have the chance to view it, so this is a kiddo who is reading this text. It is a repetitive text, so there's a familiarity, there's sight words in it that he might recognize. And he's also pointing to each of the words. And he noticed when he had skipped a page, it wasn't quite making sense anyway.
Here's outfit. Turn the page. I stick his shake. I think this way. Good job. Turn the page.
generalized data skills.
Did you skip a page?
Mm.
No. I make this zipper. Good job. I make this toilet. I make this. That's the tricky one. Take on. Zoo. Zoo. Good job.
And that's that.
Nice.
I love to see your enthusiasm when you talk about early childhood education, like it's contagious. And I think that one thing that I'm really excited about is one of our board goals is that all students reading on grade level by the end of grade 3 for literacy. And I think about all the work that we're doing with the pre-K students now and how much better prepared they're going to be as they enter school and beyond. So excited to see progress we make.
Yeah, for sure. I like the fact that you're kind of using that data. Like I can only imagine that you're probably looking at it across the district and like where supports and need to happen. I think that correlation is going to be great. Yeah.
Melissa, I'm curious, or maybe Lynn, you might know the numbers of generally the hours per week of students in FNESU who are in play school, and then how many hours per week in pre. And I know it varies from building to building. You know, we've been working on the Sheldon.
Not as much as it did last year.
Yeah.
So,
And then my, like, kind of connected to that is, does the research show that a certain number of hours per week at the play school level and a certain number of hours at the preschool level, it's kind of that ideal, like what's the ideal, like a developmentally appropriate number of hours that would be ideal for children to really be at that kindergarten readiness point, and when we're looking at things like literacy especially?
I wish there were an easy answer to that. No, you know, I think it really is quality and being able to engage children and really hone in on that learning through play. So last year we did have a pretty big spread on hours of, it really varied from 3 hours for 3-year-olds to 12 hours to 3-year-olds to 15 hours for 4-year-olds, actually 12 hours for 4-year-olds and to 29 hours. I can tell you that in our SU, there is not a correlation between the number of hours. So those kiddos who had more hours of preschool, in the data, it did not show that they had greater skills when they left kindergarten. So there isn't necessarily a correlation. It's more about intentional teaching of those skills in a way that children are going to be engaged and finding that like love for it, where they can really just generalize it everywhere. You know, and specifically in early ed, what they're exposed to outside of school really plays a big role too. So when you're driving down the road and can point out different road signs, or when you're in the grocery store and you're looking at the numbers on the aisles, or going through the list, like there are so many opportunities to capture, and the more that you can do that all around, again thinking of those bands in their development and just really trying to plug it in everywhere, the more beneficial it will be.
Do you feel as though that is communicated to families and parents and caregivers and stuff? Because that probably varies quite a bit, how engaged a family can or be or is in the kind of outside of the school environment. But that's so helpful, because some people may not even really recognize that, like all those like teachable moments that are just kind of like part of like the day to day.
Yeah, so I think it has varied, and my hope is now that we've brought in some resources, curriculum-wise, and also just now that we're kind of in a new phase, that we'll start communicating much more with families and getting the word out around just really, you can embed so many things into your routines. Even singing helps children develop their literacy skills.
And identifying that as a literacy skill too. I think one thing Melissa and I have talked about is like, now that we have this early ed coordination, how do we engage our younger students and our families? So I know the early ed teachers made an attempt last year. It was the first time we've been able to have an event in a really long time. So they had it here in the gym, and it was for anyone within FNESU. And I was in the park on Saturday with my granddaughter for Harvest Fest, and there was Melissa and a couple of our pre-K teachers, and they had a table set up for families so that they could get information. They had different things on the table, but one of the things that really stood out to me were those developmental milestones by those age bands. So I grabbed a couple myself just out of curiosity to see what it looks like. So I think now that we're here, I think that we will have more opportunities to do that, which I think is an important point, Mary.
Yeah, we have focused specifically in April and now have really focused more around just getting the word out about general development and the milestones and progressing versus, honing in specifically on literacy or math or any of that. But I do think we'll be getting to a place, relatively easily and quickly, especially with some of the resources we have that will support branching out beyond just those general developmental milestones.
Last thing I'll just say, and I know we haven't had a meeting tonight, is the connection to that birth to 3 and the importance of early intervention. So I think that's one thing, by getting that out there about the developmental milestones and making that partnership with NCSS more visible, so that families can get, when their children aren't meeting those developmental milestones, they can get that early intervention before they arrive at pre-K, which is going to make a huge difference for some of our kids to have some of those language and other skills, kind of more advanced than they would have been without those services.
Thanks so much, Melissa, that was a great spotlight. All right, so moving on, Morgan, you're up with our financial and business report.
Okay, Ken might have the ability to speak now, I'm not sure. You received your monthly financial report in your packet. Starting next month, I believe those are going to be magically emailed to you directly from the system. So check your FNESU accounts for that and for your local meeting board reports, probably on or around the 5th of each month going forward. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have on the financial update. It is only going to show you expenses through the end of August, so we don't really have a lot of payroll data in there yet. At the SU level, really everything is payroll with 3 exceptions. Your big transportation contract, the food that Dawn buys for her program, and then the tuition bills that we have for some of the kids in Robin and Michelle's universe. The food we know is going up and it's probably going to be a little higher than budgeted. You do have a transportation contract, but they have the ability to bill you extra when gas is over a certain amount, and so that will probably come in higher than expected. Michelle and Robin's tuition bills to other places will probably come in lower because we can't find placements for those kiddos. And then overall, I think because of the vacancies that we still have in the SU and across all districts, even with that increase to the teacher salary levels, we're probably going to be okay there. But once we hit September, we'll have a few payrolls under our belt, be able to see those trends a little better.
There are some pretty big numbers in there. Are they as a result of reimbursements we're waiting for, or like, for instance, like there's a food service number? Like page 3, line 4112.
So that last column is the encumbrance column, so that is when our payroll system projects out over the course of the year, to sort of make assumptions on if all the contracts are paid as they were set in, this is what it's gonna cost. That is a number that we do look at, as we go through the year right now, because we are so early in the year and because, this state-sponsored software is so dysfunctional
Yeah.
in some areas. The encumbrances, at 724 could be left over from last year, we just haven't figured out how to get rid of it yet.
Okay,
So,
and that would go for the same thing for like the no function code items?
no function code is probably your revenues up above.
Oh, yeah, it is, you're right.
And so those first
Okay.
two columns are your budget amounts, and then
Yeah,
the next two are what we received. So
Okay.
you can see on that 21, the third one on that page 2, we've received $1.1 million in special ed revenue. That's the first chunk that we get from the state.
okay.
The ones up above, the top line is mostly assessments from the districts, which we haven't had put out as of August. And then food service will start to show up when we start getting money from
Gotcha.
Don's claims.
Okay, thanks.
In terms of your budget development schedule, for the SU, we tend to do this in 2 meetings. Michelle and Robin and Stacy and I will be working on the service plan, which is a required reporting to the state, laying out what we think we're gonna spend in special ed 18 months from now. We focus primarily on those high-cost kiddos and where they might end up, and what those tuition bills would cost. But really, we're so far in advance that I don't see how they're getting these other numbers. But it's required, and so that's the first shoe to drop in terms of budget development. The first SU board meeting where you will see a budget, I believe, is November 17th, and we will focus there primarily on salaries and benefits, as we will for your 2 district meetings earlier that month. We'll probably start getting into some of the expenses by then as well, more discretionary stuff. And then December 15th, we'll bring a revised budget to you to that meeting. If you're comfortable, it's useful to set the budget at that meeting because then we know what the assessments are for your 2 districts. There have been some years where there's been enough up in the air that we've decided to wait until January. We think we're going to have greater clarity. There's nothing I anticipate being in there unless someone in the legislature shortly after the election tips some big news that they want to do to education finance that they want to do in the first week or 2 of the session. But my hope is that we'll be in a place where you can confidently warn a budget on December 15th. And I don't need an action on that or any commitment, but if anyone's feeling like that schedule is too aggressive or not aggressive enough, now would be a great time to hear that.
No? Sounds good.
So 2 things that I don't need motion, but I need guidance on. The first is your transportation contract. We talked about bidding that out last year, but we were undergoing that waiting a report by the decision support group around rerouting and providing transportation for pre-K and for after school. We're kind of at the point of the year now where we need to either decide that we're going to bid that out again. You do still have the option to roll it over for an increase no greater than the NEEP, the New England Economic Congress. Last year that was 3%. This year I'm guessing it's going to be north of 5%. We won't know what that is until December. I have not had a conversation yet with Terracell. I had tipped them last year that at some point we're going to have to bid this out. State law allows you to renew a contract for that NEEP until you would be renewing the original contract for more than 30%. So at some point, because we've renewed this so many times, we're gonna bump up against that 30%.
Right.
I can give you pluses and minuses for bidding it out this year. You'll hate to bid it out when gas is high.
Yeah.
We had one bidder when we went out to bid in 2016, and I don't think we're gonna have more than that. It would be nice to lock someone in for 3 years, if you can get someone to do that, because the year to year feels like it's easier for your current provider to retire if all they have are 1-year contracts.
I feel like if we have to bid out anyway, if we're gonna have, it's like kicking a can. I mean,
Bidding's kicking again?
well, if we're running up against that 30% and we're gonna have to bid out at the 30%, we're gonna have to do it anyway. And so, might as well do it now, but you're right about the gas. But either way, our contract is gonna increase by 5% anyway, right?
Well, we can negotiate anything up to that 5%.
Up to 5%.
I can't imagine they would take lower than that. They're pretty savvy, and
Yeah.
And we'll know what the percent is, because at least one of the other school districts that they work with is going to do that.
Yeah.
How close are we to bumping up against that 30%?
I don't know off the top of my head, but you got we're 5, this would be your 5th renewal. So 3% a year, that's 15%. We've got a couple more years that we could do, as long as it stays in the 5%.
Yeah,
I mean,
but there really isn't anyone else
I know.
to bust,
That's what I'm
right? I
saying.
mean,
Correct.
correct?
I think the way the chapter ends is that a national company comes in and buys them and their root side. And then you have a national company that's operating here.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anybody else that has the capacity to do it. I think
right.
Mississippi Valley has a couple of different contractors, but some of them have one route.
Yeah,
They just are kind of throwing that loan to them.
I mean, I'm kind of fine rolling over if we, I mean, it would be basically, because there probably is no one else to bid, that we would just be going through the process.
You
To
could
meet
have
the statute.
higher than 5% if you
Mhm.
bid, because they also know
But, correct,
you can't.
You almost guaranteed would end up
yeah,
at
so
higher
then,
15,
yeah,
because if you say you don't want it, or whatever the need is, if you say you don't want it at that, or they say they don't want it at that.
Oh, yeah,
they're
exactly,
gonna
then
come
you're
back
kind
and
of
bid it
bound.
higher.
yeah, and then I think rolling over makes more sense then, if we're under that 30.
We are under the 30, I don't remember how much, you could at least have another year.
Okay.
I don't anticipate any change to routing, any major change to routing. We have that thing that we're trying with getting kids up to Richford High School.
Oh, right.
But my interpretation of the bid law has been, when we increase a route or decrease a route, we're not really counting that against the 30%. Because it's not a like-to-like comparison.
Right,
I
okay.
don't know if I can say that with a straight face, I don't know if it's not that with the AOE, but since we have started this contract, we have cut back some routes, so that would, if they don't like that interpretation, then we have some flexibility
Right.
there, and that we back them
Right,
by staying.
How do y'all feel?
I'm leaning toward just rolling it over. That seems like the right play here. And then, I mean, it is in a way kicking it down, the can down the road, but it seems like the proper course in the moment.
Yeah.
Does anyone feel differently? Okay.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that some year we're gonna go out to bid and we're gonna get no bids, and then we're gonna be trying to learn how to
Drive a
be a
bus.
bus company.
Everyone will be getting their CDL license.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I hear it's pretty easy to do things to not be allowed to have a CDL license. Might have a staff party that encourages that. Similarly, we bid out your contract with your auditors in 2016. We did that for 3 years. In 2019, we rolled it over for 3 years, and that will bring us through the audit that we're just starting work on now. Again, we can bid it out, we can ask for a renewal from them. When they renewed the last time, they did not increase anything, and if you want me to go that route, I would put that on the table again. When we bid them out, we had 4 bidders, I believe, but they were probably a third to a half lower than the next price bidder. And since then, they seem to be the only auditing firm that's winning bids in Vermont. So in the private sector, it's a good idea to bid your audit firms out every 5-10 years, just so your management doesn't get too cozy with them. They're quickly becoming the only game in town. And so if you can lock them in at the same price, I think it's well worth it.
I agree.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. 2 meetings ago, I asked you for a proxy for the VISBIT annual meeting, which is at Lake Maury on October 21st. We need a similar proxy for the VHI annual meeting, and those documents finally came out. You had given Mary your proxy to vote on your behalf at that meeting. The VHI meetings promises to be even less interesting than the VISBIT meeting, because you're not allowed to vote on board members of the VHI. And so if you wanted to make the same motion, it would be a motion to appoint Mary Niles as authorized representative to appear and vote on behalf of the board at any and all meetings of the members of the Vermont Education Health Initiative or any adjournment thereof.
I make the motion.
All right, I'll do it by roll. Kat,
Aye.
Erin, Polly,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Shaylee, and Mary is an aye.
Okay, so you can hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
Okay. I just have a question. I didn't hear anyone respond on the audit, so is that gonna be bid out?
No.
No, we're gonna just stay the course. Does that feel?
And so does that get bid out every certain number of years?
We initially signed a 3-year contract and we renewed it for 3 years. I would approach them to renew it for that same amount if they're willing to hold the price. They could do that. They could say prices are going up, we can only do it for a year, or they're going to say that we can't do it. If they can't do it within that NEEP increase, then you'd be required to bid it out.
So they've done it for 6 years, and this would be another 3 years?
Yep, this is their 6th year that we're going into now.
Okay.
You okay with that, Kat?
Yeah, I mean, if nobody else has concerns, I just thought something like an audit would go out to bid each renewal period, but maybe I'm alone in my thinking, so.
Morgan, I mean, you said that that really these are the only folks.
Yeah, so Kat, I think that's
Available.
very true in the private sector. I don't know for municipalities how often they do it. What we found in my however many years on the board and then working for you all is that it's such a specific skill set that you need that there tends not to be many players in the field. So we had Angolano for quite some time until they got out of that market completely. They had most of the schools in the state, except for maybe somewhere along the southern border where you got access to some more urban areas. Right now, our HR seems to have most of the school contracts. I don't know if you could hear everything. We had bid it out 5 years ago now, And at that point, there was some other interest, but the pricing was significantly higher for the other entities.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that all makes sense, so I'm good.
Okay. Morgan, do you have anything else under your other?
Unless you have any questions, that's all I've got.
Great. Any questions for Morgan? Good. Okay. Lynn, that brings us to you.
Okay, so, nothing has changed in your board report in terms of personnel section, so under hiring, I have, 3 that are actionable. So a half-time special educator at Sheldon, Diane Kane. Lori Boudreau, half-time math interventionist at Sheldon. Karina Stanley, half-time literacy intervention at Sheldon. The rest of those, hiring requests are support and don't need the board approval, so I'm looking for a motion to hire Kane, Boudreau, and Stanley.
I can make that motion.
Thanks, Erin. By roll, Kat,
Aye.
Erin,
Aye.
Polly,
Aye.
Shaylee,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
So we had, 1 resignation under support staff, and I am gonna say the open positions that remain. So in FNESU, we're still looking for board certified behavior analyst. We have several positions, 3 in fact, for speech and language pathologists. That's when we did the data work this summer across the other school systems in Vermont. That seems to be one of the most common positions that people are really struggling to fill. We have a middle school reading specialist at Enosburg Middle School, literacy interventionist positions, math interventionists, occupational therapy assistants, therapeutic social worker, school psychologist, social emotional learning coordinator, half-time family engagement coordinator at Richford High School, an ELL teacher, a long-term special ed sub, and other substitute positions, teacher, nurse, paraeducator, custodian, food service. I will say we're at a place, if there's anybody listening out there, we would be open if these are full-time positions, but if there are people that are interested and not sure that they wanted to work full-time, we're at a place where we would consider people working less than full-time for these positions. So if someone is retired, even if their license has lapsed, we have ways in which the legislature has opened up pathways for us to be able to get people licensed for these positions. So I just encourage people to reach out if they have any interest at all. You do have 1 leave request that I'm bringing to you. I think in the master agreement, I have the ability to approve the leave request, but I believe that the board approved leave requests for support staff in the past. We have 1 paraeducator, Jennifer Bissett, who is asking for a leave of absence for this school year. She's just had a child and would like to have that leave. She works right now as a behavior technician, so we would be holding a behavior technician position for her. And I would think we would still have behavior tech positions at the start of the next school year. So I would ask the board to consider approving that leave of absence.
I'll make that motion.
I just have one question. Was she already on family leave with having, she just had a child, you said?
Yes,
And so she was already on the leave that's part of her, that's
the FMLA,
the FMLA,
yes.
and then just decided that,
There are childcare issues.
Okay.
It's very hard to find childcare for newborns.
yeah,
She had
That's
the baby during the summer, so she wasn't,
gotcha.
Oh, so you're right, the leave at the end wasn't.
yeah.
She had a baby during the summer, and she had a childcare arrangement, and then it fell through.
Yeah,
and
they
now
probably
she
said
can't get
sorry.
paid.
Okay, okay. I just wanted clarification. So Polly's got the motion to approve on the table by roll. Kat?
Aye.
Erin? Polly?
Aye.
Shaylee?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
So I have nothing under student. I do want to talk a little bit under teacher, staff, recruitment, and retention. I have two pieces that I'm going to go through in executive session. We're going to review an executive session at the end, teacher, staff, retention survey data that we have gathered at the end of this last school year. And then I have teacher retention strategy that I would like to discuss in executive. And there are two things that I would like to talk about. One is we've been working in our October meeting. Jamie and I are going to be bringing recruitment and retention, a draft recruitment and retention strategic plan for FNESU. So it's going to take a look at what are some of the things that we've already accomplished and what are some of the things that, you know, we could do moving forward. It's also going to bring you much more specific data about retention than you have seen before. So you're going to see that in October. So one of the things a few years ago when we began studying recruitment and retention, we had several things on our list. One was about licensure pathways, which we have worked towards that goal, have a partnership with UBEI, and since then have several other pathways that have opened up, not because of us, but they're just other pathways that have opened up. And we also had on one of the ideas that we had presented a few years ago was the Human Services and Education Program at Cold Hollow, and we're now in year one of that. The only thing on that plan that we haven't talked about at this point is considering a staff childcare option as something that we could explore as being something that would entice people to want to come to FNESU, as is demonstrated by that last leave request. It's very challenging to find childcare. So one of the things that we're struggling with when we're attempting to hire people is, one, housing. We really are struggling to find people that are coming from outside of FNESU in, because there really isn't a place for them to live. Did have some success through social media. We put out a request from people in the area to let us know if they had any housing options, and we were able to match up people that had housing with some of our new hires, so that was a positive. But we're finding people that are struggling to be able to come to work because there's not enough childcare in the area. So one of our thoughts originally, when we first talked about this a few years ago, it felt a little overwhelming. We had talked about connecting it to Cold Hollow, and we had no Melissa a few years ago when we were talking about this. So it felt like a promising strategy, but it didn't feel as attainable as it might now. So I've had a conversation with Melissa about this idea, because she certainly has the skills and expertise to be able to direct this and be able to have us get this off the ground. So what I'm looking for tonight is not action, but some guidance and direction from the board. Is this a practice that you want us to dig into and look at? Are there viable spaces, and what would it look like if we tried to build a program and then come back to you with more information? I just don't want to do that if the board isn't interested in having us explore more depth.
I feel like, there's lots of tech centers that have this piece of childcare and even preschools. Like Northwest Tech has the preschool that's been running for decades. So there's definitely successful models out there, and it would fill a need. So I feel like it's definitely something I think we would pursue, but I don't know how you all feel.
I just want to clarify one thing. I wasn't trying to say that we would couple it with a tech center at this
Oh, I thought you
point.
said with the program that
We had originally talked about coupling it with
Yeah.
the CTE Center, but now there is a whole curriculum for the education and human services. It's Ed Rising. So it could be a partner. I wouldn't necessarily couple it with CTE, but it could be a partner site so that the CTE students could have some placements in the child care center, but not necessarily run through.
Right, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you for the
It's a
clarity.
little different than what we had
Right.
originally
I see what you're
brainstormed.
saying.
Yeah.
I think it absolutely warrants an exploration. It would be really helpful to start kind of like visioning, like what would it look like? What kind of space would it require? what, as far as the physical space, and then how many people would we need to operate it, how many people in our, across the SU might actually use it, and how does the money work then with, with it, costs and such. And I also wonder if, and maybe they're just too distinct and too separate, but does it make sense to start exploring, because we're having so much trouble finding out-of-district placements for so many of our kids, and we have these excellent kind of alternative programs that have been started and are growing, and I wonder if though there would be some way that a physical space could accommodate one space used wisely and well, could accommodate both of these really just like important needs across the SU. I mean, that's a much bigger conversation for sure than just this childcare piece, but as evidenced by our last action, I mean, and having had a number of young children and really struggled myself to find adequate childcare. I mean, I think it's better than when my kids were newborn and little, but I know there's still a significant need in the community, and we have already identified a significant need for alternative programs for our kids because we don't have out-of-district placements available to them, or these waiting lists are a year or more longer when the need is now in the moment. So that's probably a bigger conversation, but I think it would be interesting to see, well, could we, is this where we start looking at having a childcare facility that is also housing our alternative programs?
So it sounds like the board is interested in us pursuing this. The next thing on my agenda, you just made a beautiful segue for me into the next part of the agenda, because it goes exactly where your thinking just went, Mary, is that we're identifying needs that are really pressing on the system, and one is childcare, and then the other is special programs within FNESU. So Michelle and I and Robin are going to tag team this part. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to move us from the recruitment retention, unless there are any other questions on that. Okay. So Mary just did my intro. It was beautiful, Mary. As many of you know, I've said this before, and it's something, I'll say again, we're really struggling as a state in Vermont, especially with our mental health system. The reality is all of us are struggling with staffing, and there are staffing and funding issues within the mental health system in Vermont. At one point last year, 40% of the positions that were school-based mental health positions were vacant in our Franklin County NCSS. They're really struggling to fill the needs at a time when the mental health needs of our youth are accelerating, and our communities, the mental health needs within our communities. When we think about systems that support public schools, mental health is a really integral partner for us. The other system that supports public schools is the Department of Children and Families, and they're struggling with the same thing we all are. At one point last year, 50% of their positions were vacant. I don't know what the data is right now, but I know that everyone is contending with this new reality of how do we keep up with the ever-increasing demand with the limited staff that we have. So what that means to us is, some of the things that Mary already said. When we think about education, all students have a right to a free and appropriate public education. We're actually legally obligated to give them a free and appropriate public education, no matter what their needs are. We cannot turn a student away at the door. We have to figure it out. And there's this continuum of least restrictive environment in public education, and most students can't access their education in the general ed classroom with no supports or limited supports. As the need increases, the level of support increases. Sometimes you can increase those those supports within the classroom, and sometimes you might need some outside support, either from mental health or from your Department of Children and Families, from alternative programs. The reality now is, as we're seeing the needs of our youth increase, we're not having access to any or as many of those services. So children that need, to be they're in crisis, and they need to be, in-house, what's the word I'm trying to say?
Residential.
In a residential, thank you, a residential treatment, even if it's short term. We have examples of students, children in our communities, and I'm using communities broadly, who have instead found themselves in an ER bed for 11 days because there are no places for those children to go. So we hear this kind of narrative in our communities about how, it's a discipline issue. It's really, it is a mental health issue is a big piece of it, and the lack of resources we have to support students is really putting massive pressure on our education system. So that's one example. Other examples are, we have in the past been able to say, we've gone up this continuum of least restrictive environment with our students, and now they need something like Project SOAR or Laraway or Centerpoint, which are all, special schools that children can go to, alternative programs where they can get more of a therapeutic, individualized support program for their needs. We're in a place now where some of our students, even if there is an opening, those programs are being selective and are saying the needs are too great for our program. So instead of, maybe logically we would have something above that, it comes back to us at the public school. So what we have had to do, and I want to give kudos to Michelle and Robin and her team, we've created in-house programs here, and we've talked about that over the last year and a half, and those programs are growing, and the need for space in those programs is far exceeding our capacity, both our physical capacity and our personnel capacity. So it is something that we've definitely created something that there's high demand for. So we're going to have Michelle talk a little bit about the current reality, what our data says about our current reality, and then we'll talk about what next.
So, as you know, we have 6 programs. The RISE program and the TAPS program are for students with autism and developmental delays. We currently have 10 students in the K-5 RISE program. There are 2 students in the middle school TAPS program, and then 7 students in the TAPS high school program. The RISE program is definitely at capacity, but we can't add any, there's not a lot of space or resources to be able to add more students in there right now. The Trail House, which is the Trail House and STEP, are our behavioral programs. There are 6 students at the Trail House, and I have some really good news, which is always was the purpose of this program, is we are in the process of transitioning 2 students back to their sending schools, so that's super exciting. So the skills we taught are working, and their data is excellent, and so we're going to start transitioning them back. The STEPS program in the middle school, anyway, of those 6 students with the adults that are there supporting, we are out of space.
So that's at the Monteith House,
That's at the
next to
Monteith
Cold Hollow.
Then the STEPS program that is here, there's 4 students in the middle school and 5 students in the high school. And they're in the lower part here we have 3 rooms and then like a safe space. And back to the Trail House portion, there are probably currently right now 10 more students that have significant challenging behaviors that I'm getting regular phone calls for that need more than what the public school can provide them at this moment. I just don't have the space to offer that skill building.
Before you go on, can we just make that point, like, this
Yeah.
isn't we're creating these programs not as this is a place that kids go and stay forever. The goal of these programs are to build those skills in those students so that they can go back and reintegrate into the classroom and, step down into supported attendance in those programs and, building on that success.
Right. And then not only that, like currently at the Trail House, which is there are 6 students, we have 3.5 behavior technicians. And so one of the challenges is like we have these 2 students that are ready to transition back, and it's not like you just send them back. We have to do this slow transition, which requires we need behavior technician and transportation to be able to make this transition work. We're like gonna try an hour, and then we're gonna try a couple hours, and so again, can't take in more students because I don't have the staffing to be able to adequately offer the skill building that is necessary right now. So that's one of the challenges. Besides the space, that's another challenge, is finding the staff. Last year, we had, so when a student in the school is having challenging behaviors, there's multiple things that we try, and then like the last thing is really is a functional behavioral assessment, which is trying to figure out what's the function of their behavior and creating a behavior plan that we implement so that they can be successful in school. And that's quite a process, and we had 28 of those over our SU, and I believe there's probably 15 referrals right now for FBAs already. So because of that, on October 5th, I am having the behavior team train our special educators to conduct what we're calling mini FBAs, or abbreviated functional behavioral assessments, so that they can create the behavior plans and implement them due to the increased demand.
And we have an opening for a BCBA, so we don't have the staffing level that we typically would, or we have had, but that's.
So just some more information. The RISE program has 5 BTs, behavior technicians. The middle school TAPS program has 1, and the high school TAPS program has 3. The Trail House has 3.5, and then the behavior program here at the high school, the STEPS program, has 4. Currently, some students, depending on the day, some students require two adults to manage.
The one piece that I would add is that we've definitely seen an increase of students experiencing imminent and substantial risk of bodily harm to themselves and others, in some situations of pretty significant property destruction since the school year started this year. So just kind of highlighting the reality of what at least a few of our schools are currently experiencing.
So I asked them to provide that data. Actually, I just want to say something about the behavior technicians, and maybe we made this point, but maybe not. We made the decision to pull them under the FNESU umbrella. We already said that part.
Yeah.
Okay. So I asked them to bring this data today so that we could have a conversation about, the unmet need. We're not seeing any more resources that are becoming available to us, and I don't know if you would quantify that it's the same as last year, better or worse in terms of availability of other resources?
Probably same as last year.
Same as last year?
I would say we have a decrease of resources available to us.
Okay.
I met with NCSS just to pull that back together and trying to figure out how we could partner. Like I've got the school part, can you help me with the therapeutic part, and let's partner. And the person I met with was like, this is a fabulous idea, but it's probably a 5-year projection because we have like over 102 families on wait lists to get services. Because I wanted to be able to figure out how to provide some at-home services for families, but they have that large of a need right now with the limited resources. So we are struggling a little more with connecting with our mental health agency on that.
So there's definitely willingness to partner, it's just it's a lack of resources. So we've identified the unmet need. We'll continue to be working to try to fill vacancies, but there is a space issue as well. So Mary kind of pointed to this in making the point of, we're looking for a space for childcare, or a space that's big enough for special programs and childcare, or is it 2 spaces? But what we're really asking is for direction from the board. Like, are we heading down the right path in terms of board's vision? And you've already said yes to exploring that for the childcare, but in terms of exploring, are there other alternatives for us to consider and look to expand upon what it is we could build here, in the absence of other services?
I'm like really conflicted on this one because I keep like kind of waffling. Like, what doesn't feel good to me is taking the kids that have these needs and putting them under one roof. Like, I feel like right now you have programs that are tied to at least even the school campus, or at least in proximity, and they're still part of the school community. And just to take them and put them in their own school doesn't feel good to me. But I definitely understand that there's a huge need, and space is an issue and staffing is an issue, like to think about it creatively. But that's kind of where my gut went.
So I agree with you on the RISE and the TAPS program. I think they're very successful in school and the pushing in. We're finding challenges, Lamonti's house is full.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do more there.
Well,
The challenge having the behavior program here is we're really struggling with elopement of our programming,
I bet.
running around the school,
For sure,
and how to get them back, and so that's been it's more the behavioral the program that I'm referring to, needing more space and in the same.
Which, that makes sense, is, like I said, like thinking creatively, like, if you have a space for that, but not just taking all of our programs and putting them in
No,
one space.
that was never the intention.
Okay.
It wasn't clear about that.
Yeah.
But I hear also what you're saying, because I think back to when I was a principal, sometimes the transition back from an alternative placement was rough, because there wasn't any kind of like step down back into the program. There wasn't a phased in approach. That the part that we're able to do, because it's our program, is we get to design that. So even if we do find a building or create a space somewhere that's not, physically attached to a school, if we have the right staffing level, we can do some of that transitioning. So it could be that they're in a place where they're accessing one preferred class on campus with support, and then we're gathering data and
We're doing it here, like the Trail House is not on campus, but they're practicing at recess the skills of being with other students. So we're walking over there now, and then when the students are able to attend a class, then we're like, let's go to music, or let's something that's low.
In addition to that, the Trail House, as Michelle mentioned earlier, has 2 students that are currently in the process of working towards that transition back, and staff from the second school have actually gone to the Trail House, started building a relationship with the student, and they're also able to do a lot of virtual work to keep those connections. So that's been nice. I think for many of those kids, it's our K to 5 population, a large majority of those students want to be back and have a strong goal of working hard to get the skills to return back to their public school. So that's been really nice, and it has been excellent to see the staff taking time out of the day to come and meet with the student, so that the student is starting to build those connections, so that when they do transition back, it's a reestablished relationship with staff that maybe they previously did not have. So that's been helpful, and I think that just speaks volumes, because that's a program that is not within the public school, and that work is currently being done. It's a lot of work on the special educator Emily that's currently at the Trail House, and the principals are also doing a significant amount of work participating in the update meetings that are happening regularly, so that they can be ready to.
That's another get the kids back.
No, go ahead.
it's just, that's another positive of having our own programs, is that that work is happening, where when you're at a SOAR or a Laraway, when we have update meetings, they typically involve a case manager that represents Franklin Northeast, and it's not the principals, it's not the connection to their schools, it's not the goal of, I mean, the goal is always to return to public school, but this is more.
Well, it's not as far removed as
Right,
you said,
they're
so
in a
that,
community.
right, and so there's a way to kind of finesse that reintegration and kind of keep those like touching in, as opposed to if you're all the way down in Johnson at Laraway, and I don't know where Project SOAR is based, but you're not here still in your community and having the ability to touch into your home school.
Looking for direction from the board, or even support of us exploring whether or not we can add that to our, you know, our list of things we're looking for in terms of expanding space-wise.
I mean, it seems to me like it's not even really an option to not explore it. Like that's the place that we've now arrived, and so I understand that it brings a whole host of big questions, budgetary and human resource and logistical questions that are big and complex for sure, but to not explore it and start to vision what it could look like and map it out a little from all those kind of components, from cost and budget and access, and where would it be, and could it be integrated with the child care facility and so on and so forth. I mean, there's no harm in starting to explore it, and both of those pieces, but especially this one for our kids that we can't have the option to send them to some of these programs out of district because everyone is so maxed out. It doesn't seem optional anymore to not start really thinking strategically about how we create this within our community.
I hope to get really good at this so I can bring in revenue, because I've already had multiple school districts, like of our Franklin Grand Isle special ed admin team, that's like, hey, we know you have this thing going on, can we tuition a kid in? I'm like, I'm not there yet. So.
My gut also is separate spaces for childcare and the alternative program.
Having run an alternative program in the past, I would second that.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing
At
our
least-
current
at least
reality,
first.
I would third that.
Space that.
Yeah.
Well, when Robin mentioned some of the more extreme cases of destructive behavior, that's immediately, that certainly is like, okay, maybe those do need to be kind of separate and distinct, and that might be,
At least some barriers
yeah.
between the sound and physical.
The physical space and environment needs for Michelle's two programs, I see those two as distinct. We've got one set of clients that you kind of want in the village center to go and practice life skills, and we've got one set of clients that you want in the middle of a cornfield where you can catch up to them.
Right, yeah.
So I think that it's important as we have these conversations and as people in the public are starting to engage with, some of the things they've never had to see before because these programs weren't in the community, these are not bad children. These are children that have really intensive needs, and they need skills in order to be successful in the public school. And our goal is beyond public school. Our goal is to provide them with the skills that they need to be successful adults after graduation. It's part of our portrait of a learner, right? So I think that sometimes it doesn't feel good, and I can see you struggling a little bit with it, Polly, and I do sometimes too, but the reality is we've always had that level where sometimes we've needed to access that more intensive support. It just feels, because there's less and there are more kids, it's more visible. And I think that's what we're starting to, we're hearing it from neighbors, and I'm sure you, sometimes when things happen, you see it on social media because it becomes public when something like that happens, but again, it isn't about, bad kids, it's just about these kids have different needs and they need really intensive support to build those skills.
Right, and my wrestle is like, I absolutely believe, good kids need skills. Sometimes making bad decisions or not knowing how to navigate. But in the same sense as like, I feel like the structure needs to be set up for success. And so, yeah. So I guess that's what I'm just saying, is like thinking about what would be a more successful model. And so I just communicated, for me, I wouldn't think a successful model would be just putting them under one roof or whatever, yeah.
I think a lot of times the kids really need a very specialized environment that is really hard to provide in the context of a public school. Because they need more space, they need more privacy, they need access to being able to work through their behaviors, and to get to kind of stabilize and be ready for those sensory stuff.
The hope is it would be, closer.
Model for how to make this work in times like these, where there are fewer and fewer out of district options. And it sounds also like there is a way to pull in revenue from other sending towns who also are in a similar situation and seeking these kind of specialized programs. And I think if anyone's going to build it really beautifully, it's going to be you all, because you've demonstrated just this incredible skill with what we've already kind of set up. And so
I also feel really bad for we do have students still that travel out to other placements, and it's like we're putting little people in taxis for like an hour to get to school every day and an hour back, and that's a lot. Just to go to school, so to have a program here is it's huge.
I think the idea of the revenue is many steps down the road, because I think we have such a flood of need right now internally. And I think it's even like, one of the things I would say about what we're seeing in the schools is we have to recalibrate a little, because, and I don't know if I'm going to say this in an understandable way, so feel free to jump in, but I think some of the things that we're contending with in classrooms are not things you would have seen previously, because we would have had a different way of responding to those situations. And I think that the needs that are Michelle's program are even greater than that. So not some of the other things that we're seeing are things that we all are having to learn as educators how to respond to in that less restrictive environment. And we're having some growing pains with that, and we're going to continue to work on that, and having really inclusive practices in our classrooms so that we can be more successful with more students there, and hopefully not have as many students in this more intensive. Okay. Anything else, Michelle or Robin?
So as far as kind of taking a pulse then of the overall board, do people feel comfortable if they continue to explore what this could look like in addition to the child care question? Pat, you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I gave a thumbs up. I was trying to show you. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
The last thing I have is quick. We adopted a policy at the end of last year that asked that we identify truancy officers in the policy. So I'm always reluctant to put people in because we have turnover. So we don't want to put names in policies and they'll be old a year after we write them. So I'm going to ask the board to make a motion to appoint truancy officers in the respective districts. So for the ERU USD, it would be the school resource officers. And for NMB USD, it would be the parent family engagement specialists.
I'll make that motion. I roll. Kat,
Aye.
Erin, Polly, Shaylee, Sarah, and Mary is an aye.
Oh, it helps me.
Okay, great. So for our central office updates, we're gonna have a recap or kind of highlight from each person. So Dominic, you're up first.
So in the tech world, it's a kind of a lot of putting out fires at the start of the school year, but a lot of it really, attending to user access, lots of new people, making sure everyone can access all the different systems and tools that they need access to. Helping people who may have forgotten how to access something since last year. And we have role changes as well. Sometimes it's just going into systems, giving people different levels of access or whatever. And then we have a lot of different systems that sync with each other. And we pause that at the end of the school year because there are so many changes over the summer. And it's not until that first day of school when everything really starts to, you can see whether or not everything's working and, if you've got any glitches there. And there are always some new tools that we've added. And this year we added Discovery Education for all of our middle school science classes. So there's a lot of just fine tuning to that kind of stuff, making sure everything's, data is flowing like it should. And this year we had an extra project with Go Guardian. That's what we use for our content filtering and monitoring of student devices on and off campus, where Enosburg had started using that a couple of years before the rest of our schools had. And we were integrating the rest of the schools during the school year, so we didn't want to mess with Enosburg, so we kind of left them on their own and made a new account for the rest of the schools. And for this past summer, we merged that all into one to be able to save a little bit on licensing that way. And it also helps when students move between schools. So that meant moving all of the Enosburg teachers, admin, and students to the FNESU account. All of that. It's kind of an overview, I guess, of where we've been so far.
So much. Jody?
All right, so I wanted to talk about the American Rescue Plan funds a little bit. So some recent expenditures related to that. Last year, we had trained all of our kindergarten through third grade teachers in Foundations, which is our common structured sequential program for teaching our foundational literacy skills. And we just registered all of our new K-3 teachers to be trained with that. They will be finished up with that by October 5th. We have ordered each kindergarten through second grade classroom 2 classroom sets of high quality decodable readers, and decodable readers allow emergent early readers to read independently. And reading volume is a contributor to reading success. So these sets for each classroom will really help our younger students to have more reading volume and increase their reading skills. Each school has $50,000 earmarked for them for highly engaging instructional materials. And some of the ways recently that schools have been spending those funds include microscopes, hands-on science kits for middle school, and musical instruments. So that is also coming along. We do need to fully allocate those funds by November 1st. So we will be reaching out to stakeholders for feedback about the public spending plan. So please watch for that, participate in that. And then we'll have some draft strategies also for you to review and provide feedback on next month.
That's great. Michelle?
Okay. Most of my beginning of the school year has been working in with all of my alternative programs to tweak some of our systems so that they would run more smoothly. We're still continuing to work on preparing for the rule changes that become in effect in July. Our school psychologists, which we have 3 in our SU, are meeting with other regional school sites to work on understanding patterns of strengths and weaknesses, which is the model that we have chosen to move forward with to determine a specific learning disability. So they're working on what are some similarities and differences with the new models? What are some things that align with our current practices and beliefs about special ed and intervention? What implications do we see for our schools? And they're going to continue to meet monthly so that we're kind of all on the same page locally. And then just wanted to highlight that moving forward with the rule changes, determining a specific learning disability is going to look a little bit different. We're going to be having to identify 5 different elements. And one element is demonstrating a lack of adequate achievement in Tier 1 instruction, and then demonstrating a lack of progress in interventions. The third one is exclusionary factors, which really relates to attendance or social emotional components. The fourth is going to require us to do some collect observational data, and then the fifth one is parental involvement. So that's where we're headed with the new rules. Thank you. Michelle Irish.
So I took a little bit of a different approach this month, and I tried to break the work I'm sharing down by the board goals. So one of the biggest board goals I focus on is the fact that all of our board goals talk about all students, and really that thinking that all means all. So one of the things we're doing in October is that our whole supervisory union will be participating with some more work with Dr. Rebecca Haslam on equity. The title of the workshop is All Means All, creating conditions where everyone can thrive. And we're going to be spending the whole morning of that in-service day talking about language and how we use our language with students, what kinds of language we're using. There's several different layers of that. We will also have a student presentation, which we're really excited about. They have now given there's 3 students who've given a presentation from Richford High School. They created the presentation. They asked for, and maybe you all have seen it. I can't remember. Did they present a spotlight? Okay. So they came to the substitute teacher training this year. They came to our leadership team this past month, and they lead us through a workshop around interrupting hate language. It was incredibly powerful. They're going to be kicking off our in-service day with the first half hour with the entire supervisory union. So I think that's really exciting. And then we're going to have, after Dr. Haslam's workshop, we'll be breaking up into school groups to do some practice work with speaking up at school and more interrupting strategies. So that's, I think, an exciting thing that's coming up. Regarding the board goal number 2 around proficiency-based graduation requirements, we have started last spring with the Youth Adult Partnership. I think I shared some of that with most of you. In the past, we have created sort of 3 different pathways or opportunities for students and youth and adults to work together. One of them is to creating a culture of belonging. We're still in the process of identifying what that group will be working on. There'll be a retreat at the end of October to sort of solidify that work. We also are inviting students to participate on building a robust advisory system, and that will be a combination of youth and adults as well. And then also looking at creating a communication strategy for our portrait of a learner is the third sort of opportunity for students to be engaging with us in that work together. And then the third goal was around social emotional learning. I've attached the social emotional learning for adults modules that we're working with at all of our in-service and early release days. And so all of our faculty in particular will be working through these modules to sort of build their own facility with social emotional learning. And then the central office group is going to be doing something slightly different that's more focused on our own social emotional learning. And
Support staff in many schools.
And we're actually, Heather and I have been working on developing a calendar of support staff opportunities during the remaining in-service days, and using there's a lot of social emotional learning components to that. So those are optional if they want to participate and have the time. It kind of depends on how many days they have to give us as part of the contract. Those are just the big highlights. Then do you want me to talk about the grant now or later?
Board business.
Take some shout. Heather?
Charlotte stole one.
Slides, that's okay, said it very well. So October's really busy for after school. We've got our lights on, just a national celebration of just highlighting that school doesn't end at 3. We're still here, we're still working with youth. This year, we're really trying to have youth develop a logo because Leaves has been around nearly 20 years now and doesn't have a logo. So we're trying to like build that sense of unity and identity within our programs. And we're also having our regular site visit from the Agency of Education. That's going to be the end of October as well. This is the first week of after school programming for LEAPS. This year, programs are going really well. Programs are full. There's some exciting stuff happening, like the Richmond Junior Senior High School program, going into its 4th year for sure, 21C funding. It's getting bigger as expected. So that's a great celebration. And we have youth advocacy at that school to build a drama program. So we're kind of reaching out, trying to see who might support us. I was just spending some time planning for any ways. Email, contact. I don't know if she would be able to be there, but she might be able to give us some ideas if we could support. So we're working on building that, continuing with youth voice and agency. A good example is at Montgomery School, we have middle school students who really wanted to build a Dragons program, and we're like pulling the middle schoolers right there. It's a student created program. They're talking it up, and 20 kids want to join this. So it's going to be epic, and it's going to be so much fun, and I hope I get to go to see some of their campaigns. Something new this year too is we've created a brochure template for all of our LEAP sites. I don't think I've spoken about that yet. Just kind of going through, and it helps to make sure that all of our sites are sharing the same kind of information. We look for readability, and it also kind of helps families who maybe have students in multiple schools or who travel to or move at some point. The brochures will not be familiar, will be straightforward and just more accessible for families. And so far it's worked pretty well.
Thank you so much. Jamie?
Okay, so I've been busy since the start of school, still trying to get new employees in, and we've hired 58 new professional staff members for this school year, 38 support staff. So that's an addition of 4 professional staff since the last one this evening and 12 support staff. I think it's changed even a couple more since Friday when I wrote this. We've had quite a few requests already for leaves for this year. So we're at 16 total FMLA leave requests for this year. And 8 of those, so half of those leaves will require long-term licensed substitutes. So an unlicensed sub can only work 30 days. So anything greater than 30 days requires a license. We've been busy trying to get all the micro-credentialing finished. We've had 12 new micro-credentialing applications for this school year. So 6 behavior, 4 literacy, 1 math, and 1 SLP. And quite a few that are renewing their credentials. So they have September and October, which I believe right now. End of October. Okay. So they'll be completing those. Also been busy with licensing. We've requested 28 provisional licenses and 15 emergency for this year. That's 6 additional provisional and 1 additional emergency since the last. Everybody was fully licensed by the person, so it's 6. And then the last thing would be the column movement. So any teachers that are making any column movements for this school year, they have till September 30th to get us all necessary. So deadline's finished yet.
Say. Thanks, Jamie. Dawn, you're up.
So we got off to beginning of the school year with a few bumps in the road, as it always happens with food service, with supply and demand. You never know what you're gonna have coming on that truck. It's looking like things are coming in better this year. We're struggling with our produce of fruits and veggies and whatnot, just to get a good quality product because they're having problems, you know, out west. So that's a big struggle that we are following through big time. So it's just, you know, having to order more product just to make sure that you have enough to serve what you need, because we want to have those options out there. Something new that we've done this year with Enosburg High School, middle high school, is we've implemented a salad bar. So before, those kids will go through two lines. They'll go a hot line or a deli sandwich line. And then I have two cashiers right there because we are back to punching numbers in, so that students are learning their numbers and punching those numbers in. That's an easier way to track their meals for our cleaning system. So what we've done is we've just made it so that when they hit that cashier at the end of that line, they've got that reimbursable meal, and then your salad bar is like an added on extra. We've gotten a lot of support. Kids are really, really liking that option. It's really come off running big. They're really enjoying it. We are taking, and at the high school here, last year, Earlene Bosley retired after 47 years. And when she left, she still had some stuff that she wanted to get accomplished. And one of the big things that she wanted to get accomplished was, we have always struggled at a high school level with a menu board, because anything that you have for a menu board, kids think it's fun just to erase numbers and, you know, what you have written down on it. And so we ended up working with Dominic and Thomas, and we got a TV screen that is run off from a computer. And Jen, who is the lead here at the high school, has done an awesome job running that program and running that screen. And something that she's really taken to heart is that every day she likes to have some sort of a little inspirational quote on that. So that's something that the kids are really looking forward to. And, you know, they come down and see that, and they see what their menu is when they come in the morning for breakfast, for lunch. They post the whole menu. They post the options for what they're having for that day as well. So we're moving in the right direction. We've got fresh fruit veggie grant rolling in most of the schools, as far as the elementary schools, because unfortunately that is a grant that can only serve the elementary schools. And there are schools that run a K-8 school that also includes the middle school. But when we have it not in a K-8 school, we can't get a grant that goes into that school.
So I'm curious, I wanted to ask, how much money is the grant that you use for the K-8 or schools? For the fresh fruit and veggie grant?
So right now, not all schools are approved. We're still working on getting some approved.
Yeah.
They open it up at different times depending on the free reduced rates in that building.
Okay.
So right now in our district, we have four programs that are running. And I don't have that figure right in front of me, but I can definitely get that and put it into my next board meeting.
And really what I was getting at is, what would it cost us to provide that for our high schoolers? For what, if there's no grant that is available to have a comparable program, could we budget so that they too have the fresh fruit and veggie program available to them?
Part of what we've also kind of said, and I've kind of done this, like, I've kind of stressed this a lot to these different high schools, where when they want to have that program, our participation rate for breakfast is very, very low in a high school setting. So something that we're looking at doing in that high school setting, and they've gone off running with this, they're tracking it here. It's kind of my piloted program, is they're tracking it where, okay, we have these menued options. What are some of the things that kids want for a breakfast program, and what will they find is necessary to come in and get into our breakfast program if we were to serve? So one thing that we're finding is that they're really liking like the breakfast sandwich type thing, or some sort of a hot breakfast. So what we're really trying to push is to have them come and get that breakfast. And that's a start. Then we're offering you all of, your fruit, your veg, your fruits at your breakfast time. You can take that with you and bring it with you, so that if you want that later in the day, you have that option. And so, a lot of it, like here, we have them sit out here in the hallway with a cart and try to get the kids as they're coming into school off that bus to grab that breakfast and go. In years past, sometimes it's been a little stronger. This year, the participation just isn't there. We're lucky right now if we're getting 10 breakfasts off that cart in the morning. So that's why we're just trying to look at it and say, if we change it up, are they going to start taking it more? And that's what we're trying to do.
So, yes. Okay, thanks, Dawn. I appreciate that. Anything else, Dawn?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Melissa, do you have anything that you'd like? I mean, you did your big spotlight. Do you have anything you'd like to add or highlight from your report?
I'll just point out one more thing that we've transitioned from between last year or past years and this year. Previously, in past years, we've had some classroom teachers also as special educators, so they had a dual role, which really wasn't a sustainable model. And this year, we have built capacity in that we have specific early childhood special educators. So now folks don't have to have that dual role or have their classroom and be the special educator for that school and travel to a different school to be the special educator. Like it's a lot clearer, more streamlined, and I think that will benefit classrooms and students.
Great. Yeah. Robin?
So we have been able to conduct 3 ALICE trainings during the month of August. We have 111 staff members that received that training. Yep, it's the active shooter options-based response training that empowers staff to make survival decisions. And I think in August that I presented that training included a 1-hour verbal presentation and a 2-hour technical that we held over at Cold Hollow. We are going to be doing another one of these trainings in January. We have, as Jamie stated, a large number of staff that have been hired since the last training we did in August. We also have some staff that have not been able to attend some of our August trainings for multiple reasons. So we'll get them included on the January training. So kind of a shout out to Cold Hollow for the use of their building, and Courtney Fletcher, who helps with a lot of the logistics, and Andre and Jim, our school resource officers that partner to assist in that work.
And Robin. Oh, sorry.
I helped once and I screwed everything up.
So Robin's not gonna say this about herself, but Robin has taken on this as an extra task to be kind of the coordinator of our emergency response work, and she's humble in how much this has been for her to take on. She's been in charge of all of these trainings and coordinating all of this work, and is going to be working with the team. I'm sure she's going to talk about this piece, but to do the next steps we need to do to bring this back to life with our students. Are you talking about that?
Very little bit more about the staff. So we can kind of.
We've been really in a good place pre-COVID with practicing with kids, and some of the things that you do in the practice were not very COVID restriction friendly. So in all of the chaos of the pandemic, we really lost sight of some of the regular practice of ALICE, of each of the individual ALICE protocols. So we're going to bring that back to students and kind of refresh. And for some people, it'll be new. For some of our younger kids. And so Robin will be working on that with the team to bring back those developmentally appropriate new lessons and practice that we'll have throughout the year.
All staff in FNESU are required to participate in an online training. I think I mentioned this in August, but our goal for that is 100% completion. We did a lot sometime during local in-service, but there were definitely some challenges with the new platform that we're using. But as of this morning, we were at 82.93%, and I'm pretty confident that by mid-October, we'll be at that 100% completion rate. We also, August was and September were big months for us for conducting the Handle with Care trainings. That's the program that teaches staff to develop and use management and relationship skills to reduce tension and create and maintain a safe environment for students. So there's a verbal de-escalation and a physical intervention program embedded in that training. We had 29 staff members that were recertified. We had 20 staff members that received the initial training, and we had 9 staff members that received training specific to early education and pre-K. That was some collaboration with Melissa around that. And definitely a huge shout out to Jeremy Sanborn, Heather Hawkins, and Ashley Irish, who are my assisting instructors in this. And definitely without them, this would be difficult for me to manage alone. And lastly, our schools are working on their egress and lockdown drills for the month of September, which is mandated drills that the Agency of Education requires. Each school, the other thing, in addition to what Lynn said about the work we're doing to kind of create a calendar for building leaders so that students in similar grade levels are getting consistent trainings across all our schools. We have each school that is going to be having all of their staff participating in a building level tactical review of the ALICE program. So it's kind of a kickoff of what we do at Cool Hollow with the initial. So now the staff will get to participate in the buildings that they work in. That work is going to be led by Andre and Jim, so our school resource officers. And we have all building principals that have that are utilizing one of their staff meetings, and we have all schools assigned to this, and all schools should be completed by the end of November. So I feel like we're in really good shape with the training that we're going to be doing with our staff, and then the work that they're going to be able to do with all of the students. So I feel like we're going to be in a really good place for our other mandated drills throughout the course of the year. So much traffic.
Yeah.
So K-12, we're really focusing on that portrait of a learner area, independent decision maker. So that's kind of filtering from K all the way up. We're trying to really focus on that piece. And then leveraging the technology, and also now that we can maybe be hybrid or in person or do some in-person type things, we're leveraging some community members. So the technology shifts that we made, we're using our reading program. That's not a reading program, a library program that's available after hours. So we were using programs that were like stop at 3 o'clock and kids couldn't get books. So we kind of got rid of some things and consolidated into one that they can really access, and it's really good, and they're really able to access it, and they're really accessing it already. We're using something called Exact Path for some intervention work, or to target our intervention a little bit more. So they're working on it asynchronously, but then we can see what's in the back end, so we can kind of respond to what's happening. And then the literacy teacher's been coordinating with a bunch of community members, but most notably she's partnering with the North Country Animal League to do a project that's integrated literacy art in November, and Mary's daughter Avery is gonna do watercolor lesson for us. So we're like pulling on some community members to do things. This past Tuesday, we had an animator from Pixar come do a lunch with a professional. That's gonna be a monthly thing, that the kids are gonna kind of weigh in on which professionals they'd like to see. But the first one was an animator, and it was really fun. Bakersfield 6th grade joined us, so we're like trying to draw some other people in. And then I've been spending a lot of time in this building with both steps and managing FPA at the high school, which is getting bigger. We have 7 high school tuition students. This is kind of the money piece that you guys might be able to care about. And you might be able to add some specifics to it, but the steps kids and the trail house kids are getting their instruction from us. So we're sort of working with them, and I'm working with Melissa down the steps program, Maggie for the high school FPA thing. So it's been lots of like coordinating and collaborating, and it's been a busy fall.
The tuition gap, can we just clarify, that's specific to 9-12?
Correct.
Drive
7
students
high
in.
school students from sending districts. Several of which started somewhere else in 2-hour program of purpose. So we're definitely finding out about it.
Were you able to nail down that data?
No.
No.
I don't know how to take it apart without the 10 person rule.
Right.
The numbers are just too small at the grade level.
Oh, right.
So I'm gonna have to figure out something else to report to you besides like what I did.
And it was,
I think it's gonna have to
remind
be
me.
growth. I
Was it
focused on
SBAC
reading, no, I focused on reading F&P scores because of the 3rd grade reading goal. The board
Right.
goal. I was trying to like address that. Fine. I think we're gonna have to do growth over, growth.
So they should
Overall.
put them all together.
Got you.
It's just
But
the numbers are
doesn't
so
each-
small, like we had 1 3rd grader, yeah, I can tell you what your scores are. but-
Oh, right. Yeah, no, it was more of like taking the group, right? So if you have 20 kids and you said like 63% are
This
near or
this.
above, and I'm like, okay, how many of those are near?
Right.
And how many are above?
Right.
And it doesn't matter grade level.
It doesn't matter grade level. Out of your kids, what is that 60? Like, is it?
But if you
So it's
talk
only
about
30 to
numbers,
6.
it's such a small number that if you don't use a percentage.
Well, that's okay. I mean, if you have 20 kids and you're like, okay, I have 3 kids that are near, and I have 16 kids that are above. Awesome. Like, you know what I'm saying? Instead of just saying like 63 is that near or above, it's like you lump them
Instead of
all in.
lumping those together.
Yeah.
On the chart, maybe it's me not knowing that much about FEP.
Right, like
not.
Because they lump them together on the chart.
Well, it's
yeah.
like a continuum.
Right.
But there's a big difference between a student who's near and a student who is succeeding. So you
Right.
kind of want to know what the percentage of kids who are almost there and the kids who are there and the kids who are exceeding. We kind of want to see like where that flushes out.
I'll have to help me like tease out the data in a way that's makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
You can
even with
take the numbers
FNP
off.
data, like people use it like for intervention, like how many are not meeting.
So you're not even saying by grade level. you're
No,
saying
like,
Total school.
right,
taking
because you
that-
said out of all these kids, 63% are near or meeting or exceeding. So it's like, how does that shake out?
All right, thank you. And Vern is not here, eh? Not virtually. I know he's not here. Okay, so his report's in there, in the board packet for anyone who wants to check in on.
Yeah, we thought it was more relevant than to checking at the district
Right,
levels.
oh,
because
that's
it's-
right, yeah,
This work is more building.
Yep. totally, okay.
So Gabby gets from physical school.
So.
Dominic will be so excited.
All right, thank you all, that's great. Board business, any future agenda items? I know Michelle and Robin, we talked about for October, you would be bringing some of that transportation related information to us for discussion. So that needs to be on for October's meeting. And Lynn, when we earlier, we didn't really land on kind of a trajectory time-wise for when we want to kind of, you know, what the steps are around the childcare and our alternative program space. So I don't, if October is probably premature to like.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Because I think one might go faster than
Okay.
another. So I will put it on to
Okay.
revisit in
Yeah.
one of the next.
As we get closer, see if we're ready. Otherwise, we can punt it to a future meeting.
And do you want the Michelle and Robin under board business? Or, and that's for the special programs?
Right, that was some of the transportation stuff that when we were talking about the new bus route between in August with the, for Enosburg, Richford, that it kind of begged the question about how do we provide equitable transportation and access to it for some of the kids in their programs.
We can just put it under Michelle's and we'll know that we need to go to her.
Okay.
Let her say, give her time for that.
All right.
My
cool.
gut is that that's probably on Michelle's agenda. That we move forward.
So she has-
All right. Anyone else have anything that they know now they'd like on the agenda for folks? Okay. So then that brings us to the discussion, Michelle, around the VSBA, the mini grant.
Sure. So the VSBA has put out a request for proposals for mini grants regarding equitable, anti-racist, and inclusive education communities. They're offering up to $5,000 for boards to apply for that money. I've talked a little bit with Mary and with Lynn about creating a series of forums with like dinner, childcare, facilitation, to engage the community around our strategic plan and potentially our portrait of a learner. And so the action needed is the board needs to authorize either the superintendent or the board chair to apply for that grant. And that's to advance the equity and inclusion of our community aligned with the essential work of school boards. I have started populating some of the language so I can help with that. But one of the two of them will need to actually apply through the grant itself.
Yeah. And I don't know, do we want, I mean, I feel like it would be better as a collaborative effort if it's the superintendent and the board chair.
I think you can only submit
Only
one.
needs to be
So
one.
it's just one person needs to be identified as
Okay.
that.
I think the point is we can make a stronger application together. Is that what you're saying?
Right, certainly. It'll be a collaborative effort, even if it's just one person as the figurehead, sure.
Okay, call the vote.
Okay, so the motion, we need to clarify, do you want it to be the superintendent or do you want it to be the board chair? People have a preference. Do you have a preference, Len?
I do not.
This sounds like logistics, right? It's really what they brings out as the contact person.
Right.
It sounds like they work together to create. the-
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's do it as board chair then. Okay, so by roll, Kat,
Aye.
Erin, Pauline,
Aye.
Shaylee,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
Can I just get clarification on how the motion should read?
Okay, don't even go, I have on my note. So it's The board authorizes the board chair to apply for a $5,000 mini grant to advance equity and inclusion in our community, aligned with the essential work of school boards.
And it's around portrait of a learner work
Portrait of a learner strategic plan
and strategic plan.
around engaging the community.
Engagement.
So really the funding will probably go to paying a facilitator, a professional facilitator, childcare and dinner, or some kind of refreshment to draw people in and make sure that they have access.
Okay, excellent. So I know we have a superintendent evaluation, which will be done under executive session, as well as Lynn's 2 executive sessions. So it's 3, and we're gonna be needing to come in and out of each, eh?
Yes.
Okay.
You're supposed to go in for one,
Yeah.
finish your business, come out, go in for the next.
Yeah. Okay.
But my 2 are connected.
I was gonna
So
say.
I
And
actually.
can they be done in
the
one?
same- let me Just double check how I word it.
Do you anticipate action for any of these 3?
Not for hours.
I'm looking for, no action. And just a discussion, so no action.
Okay. All right, so I'll make, Lynn, we'll talk, maybe we'll do yours first.
Okay.
And you said we can do it under just one, it's just
Yeah.
one executive session.
They're both about teaching retention.
Okay,
I'll move into executive.
okay. All right, by roll, Pat,
Aye.
Aaron, Polly,
Aye.
Mary is an aye, Sarah,
Aye.
Shaylee, aye, great. Thank you all so much.
Could I keep Morgan?